What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for another car review. This is of course the 2018 Porsche 718 Cayman GTS. Huge thanks to Sophion from Redline Reviews for letting me review his very cool Cayman GTS here for you guys today. So about the Cayman GTS, well, you know, the 718 version is where it ditched the 6-cylinder, went to the 4-cylinder turbo here, but also got a very nice refresh as well. And so, you know, just small tweaks here and there, but it makes a huge difference. You know, so this one has, you know, these blacked out headlamps that look really, really sharp, you know, with the LED lamps there. And, you know, I also really like the black portion of the lower front bumper there. I think it really gives it a nice understated, aggressive look without being over the top. You know, a lot of the competitors to the Cayman are really, you know, showy and trying to really stand out. This one is just a lot more understated. You know, Porsche just has simpler lines, just very clean designs, and I think it really sets it apart in a different way where it's just simpler, but that gives it a really nice innate beauty. And so anyway, coming down to the sides here, you have these nice large black wheels that look great, especially with the red calipers, and the drilled rotors looks really awesome. Going out toward the sides here, you know, I just love the you know, fastback coupe shape here of the Caymans that they've always had. And I also love the scoop there in the side, and especially in white here. That scoop really pops, and it really looks cool, you know, versus like a car with a darker color where that would kind of blend in more. And also really with the white color here, you can see just those lines going through the doors are very attractive. It just, again, just very beautiful in a simple way. Going out back there, I also love the restyled tail lamps here, which are again more smoky and darker in appearance than the previous red ones you got on earlier Caymans. And I think it's a really great redesign. I also love that little strip that runs across the middle there with the badging and stuff. And you know, just these center mounted exhaust tips look very cool as well. So yeah, I mean, it's just a very cool looking vehicle, but again, it doesn't stand out a ton, but I think that's what Porsche owners like. They like flying under the radar, and 911 owners could have way more showy vehicles, but they choose not to. I think the same thing applies here to the Cayman. It's definitely one of the more conservative vehicles in its segment styling wise here, but I think it's still beautiful nonetheless.
As for the interior here in this 718 Cayman GTS, well, it's a pretty nice place to be. So first off, sitting down in these seats, you have these 18-way adjustable seats here in this one, which I believe is an option, and it's just a really nice option to have though. I mean, they're so adjustable, very, very comfortable. They're heated and ventilated here. Those are again options, and just is a really nice seat. I mean, the leather is very nice feeling, and just the adjustability. I mean, you can adjust the side bolsters both for the torso and for the thighs independently, and that is really great, and just means that you can custom tailor the seat to exactly the way you want it to feel, and overall fantastic seats. Next is the steering wheel here. Now this is the Sport GT steering wheel, and I love it. I love the little rivets you have on it here. Just a beautiful looking wheel. It has a great 9-3 grip too, nice 10-2 notches, and you know, not overly thick or anything, just a really nice feeling wheel. You have these two little wheels within the wheel here, and those will control volume, and then you also on the right hand side that'll control the digital portion of the gauges. But I really like how there's only, I mean, like 4 buttons here plus those little wheels. Very simplified. I love that. Love the paddle shifters here you have on the back of the wheel, and you can actually see through the hole here to the paddle shifter, which is kind of cool. I also love how the sport mode toggle is now here on the wheel as this little additional wheel, and you spin that to go into whatever mode you want to go into, as well as the little button here in the middle for the sport response, which gives you a little bit of an overboost function, which we'll try out here later on. And so overall, it's a nice small wheel too, and just a fantastic steering wheel. Next are the gauges here in the GTS, which are classic Porsche gauges, and very attractive but simple and beautiful, with just the speedometer, tachometer there, digital speed readout in the bottom, which is always great, and then that right cluster portion is just a little digital gauge thing. And so first off, it'll show you your boost gauge and a few other things there in that. I wish that the boost gauge was a little bit larger though, and you can have that as like a dedicated screen of just one large gauge, but I love that you can still at least have a readout there. And then you can also scroll down to show your media. It'll even show you a little view of the map too, which is very cool and really nicely fills out that display. And just a couple other things there, but really just nice to have all that. Coming over to the center of the dashboard here, right up top, this one is the Sport Chrono package. That's part of the GTS package. And so you have that beautiful clock there, which I love the way it ticks, you know, little by little there. It's very cool. And then coming down, you have your Porsche command system, which is just a nice smaller touchscreen. I believe it's about 7 inches. You know, it's on the smaller side, and with, you know, screen sizes ballooning in some other luxury sports vehicles these days, you know, this feels a little dated, I think, honestly, but I like it. Everything here is very small. Everything in the Cayman, for that matter, is very small. The buttons are a little bit smaller than your average buttons. The screen's a little bit smaller. Everything's just a little more delicate feeling here in the Cayman, which I like personally. So it's just, you know, a nice screen though. You can get Apple CarPlay as an option. This one does not have it though. You have to pay a couple $100 extra for that, unfortunately. No Android Auto still either in Porsche, so if you're an Android user, you're out of luck here, unfortunately. But yeah, nice to at least have the Apple CarPlay integration there. That's a start. And it's a very simple infotainment system to use. You know, with a lot of the other German brands being overly complicated and having a million submenus and stuff, this is nicely simplified. I really like the way that's set up. It's very easy to navigate. Although I do wish there was an on-screen home button. I haven't found one, so I have to continue to keep going down to this this home button that's a hard button here down by the tune knob in order to get backwards. And so that would be nice to kind of have something on screen to get me back home. But otherwise, still, you know, nice nonetheless. I also love the volume and tune knobs, which are pretty close to the driver here and are just really nice feeling knobs. Just a few buttons there for shortcuts, and then you have your climate controls here, which again is just a few buttons, not overly complicated. They have improved these Porsche interiors. You know, they used to have tons and tons of buttons, and they've nicely simplified that. And then you have a few buttons here behind the shifter just to toggle the suspension modes, the spoiler, exhaust, the auto stop start, and traction control, and that's it. And one thing that the Porsche does very well as far as interior goes is storage space. So first in the doors here, you have a pretty small pocket that opens up here, but you know, you can fit small documents or things like that in there. And then you have another little larger pocket here in front of the Bose speakers, which this one has. Coming over to the center here, you have just, this one has the smoker's package, so you have a cigarette lighter and a little ashtray here. Now you can opt to not have that, and then just you'll have an open space there that's uncovered. And then you have the center armrest, which has a little bit of padding to it, but it's honestly firmer than I would like. And anyway, you open that up, and then you have a very shallow area. You could fit your smartphone in there very easily, and also a traditional power outlet in there. Also, if you're wondering where a USB jack or auxiliary jack are, those are actually in the glove box here. You open that up, and you know, you have one USB jack and then the auxiliary jack, and that is it. So nice to have those at least. And you know, thankfully that glove box is pretty large. You can fit, you know, an iPod or your phone or something in there, and be able to, you know, hook all that stuff up if you'd like. Would be nice to have something out in the open here, but again, it does add a little bit more clutter and stuff. So I don't mind them hiding it away there, and at least, you know, since we are in a small vehicle, reaching over to the glove box isn't as much of a hassle as it would be in a larger vehicle. If you're looking for the cup holders here, they're in typical Porsche fashion. Over on the passenger side, you open up this little cover, and then you have these two that swing out, and it's, you know, a decent solution. It seems like Porsche owners really love those little cup holders and are really attached to them. I don't think it's the most substantial cup holder. You know, you couldn't fit a super large drink in there, or at least I wouldn't have confidence in doing that, because, you know, it's hanging right over all of your buttons and screen and stuff. So, you know, I'm not in love with it personally, but I think it works, and it does allow for a very narrow little center console here, so you don't have any large cup holders or anything cluttering up this area. And so I think it works, but, you know, I think it would be nice if there was another place like a bottle holder in the door or something like that. You also do have a net here in the passenger's footwell. Cargo space here in the 718 is actually fantastic, and that's one of the benefits here of the mid-engine layout. So first off, the hatch in the rear there is a pretty nicely sized space. You could fit like a large duffel bag there towards the rear of it. Now, you might be able to fit a small carry-on size suitcase, but might be a little bit of a squeeze there, just because it's not the biggest space there. Now, you do have, you know, that flat portion there, so you can, you know, put some slimmer items in there with the hatch for versatility, which is nice, but, you know, it would sacrifice your rear visibility there. And there's also little very deep pockets actually, both on the right and the left there, as you get closer to the interior here. And so it's nice to have those as well. But the main thing here, of course, with the Porsches is the front trunk, or frunk as it's affectionately called. And that is huge. I mean, very deep. You could stand up a couple suitcases in there. I mean, you can see that's a normal size backpack I have in there, and that is looks pretty small in that space. So I mean, just a massive amount of space in there, and that is what puts this ahead of just about every other sports car in this size class as far as usability and daily drivability. Because, you know, I mean, you have stuff like the new Supra, doesn't have nearly as much space, you know, when you combine the front trunk and the rear here in this. And, you know, many other sports cars just have a normal trunk, which is fine, but I think this even matches a lot of those with, you know, having a ton of space in the front there, plus the space in the back. And so I think overall, this would be an excellent vehicle to live with for that reason. All right, so starting to go for a drive. The Porsche key is very cool. I've always loved these keys where it looks like a car, the way it's shaped. Just a very nice key. Now the buttons here are a little bit rubbery. I'd like to see that switched over to like metal or something to be a little more expensive feeling, but still a nice key nonetheless. This one does have the Porsche entry and drive as well, which means you do have keyless access, keyless entry, so you can just walk right up, grab the door handle when it unlocks itself. And so it also means that you don't have to put the key into the left hand slot here, which is a typical Porsche thing. So instead you just put your foot on the brake, twist this little knob here, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off here in the 718 Cayman GTS. So the first thing that I think I noticed, now this one has the PDK transmission, which is like a $3,400 option, very, very popular option. I think very few people go for manuals anymore in Porsches, unfortunately. But the PDK is a really good transmission, so I don't blame anyone for going with it. It's a dual clutch transmission, but it is so good at inching up in traffic and at low speeds and everything. It seems to be very good at picking gears too, where, you know, in normal mode here, it is all about maximizing efficiency. So you have it really wanting to upshift very early, and sometimes it almost feels like it's laboring the engine because it wants to upshift so early. But there are other times like now where it's hanging on to gear, so it is intelligent and does a great job. And of course it does get a lot sportier whenever you go into those sport modes. And of course, if you want to change gears yourself, all you have to do is just pull one of these paddles, or you can slap it into the manual mode and it will, you know, stay in whatever gear you choose. But it really loves being in the highest gear possible in normal mode, so it tries to maximize its efficiency. The funny thing though about efficiency is that the fuel economy isn't stellar here in the Cayman. Even though it now runs a turbo 4-cylinder and this PDK, you know, likes to shift early, we're still only getting 20 mpg in the city, and then it has 26 on the highway for 22 combined, and that's worse fuel economy than even stuff like the Supra with its larger 6-cylinder engine. It's a heavier weight, and this is a much more aerodynamic shape, so I'm not sure why it doesn't get better fuel economy, at least for the EPA estimates. Maybe in real world, you know, situations it'll be better. But anyway, moving on, other things here. You have excellent visibility in the Cayman. That is one thing that is fantastic, especially compared to a lot of the competitors like the Supra. This is so much better visibility wise. So you have pretty thin A-pillars here, but everything, the dashboard is just very low. Everything sits down very nicely so that you have a very large windshield for a vehicle of this type. You just see the fenders there a little bit, but otherwise, you know, very easy to see out of. You have nice large side windows and a little rear quarter window too, so there's no pillar there really, so it's pretty easy to see around. And view out of the back is fantastic as well, with a nice large hatch there for the glass, and so very easy to see out of there. And just cruising on a main road here now, you know, it's a very nice refined ride for the most part. It's pretty comfortable here. You know, you have this Porsche active suspension management, which you get with the GTS, and so that gives you these dampers. You can go in sport or normal mode, and you know, it really in normal mode here seems to be pretty smooth. Now of course it is a sports car like ride. It's not going to, you know, ride like a Cadillac or anything, but it is pretty smooth here, you know, all things considered, and feels pretty good. Again, it's set up to be a very good daily driver, and I think it very well could be. You also get torque vectoring, which is a brake-based system here as part of the GTS package. You also get the sport exhaust. These seats are part of that package, and a couple of other things. And so that's kind of the whole idea behind the GTS package here, is that it's supposed to bundle a lot of popular options for a slight discount, so that if you're going to get all these options on a Cayman S, you're better off just going for the GTS, and you get a little bit of extra special touches as well as, you know, having all those nice improvements. And it just is a really nice cruiser whenever you want it to be. You know, in normal mode here, like I said, it really favors those higher gears, and just cruises along. The exhaust is noticeable, and honestly in normal mode here sounds a little more guttural. You know, this is this 4-cylinder that has a little bit of a Subaru tone to it, but I'm gonna put it up into the Sport Plus mode, and let's try and do a little acceleration. Sophian suggested launch control, and so we'll try that briefly. Okay, I gotta slow it down. This thing is fast. I really wish I could have stayed in it longer, but this thing, oh, it gets up and goes, and then it just transforms everything. The Sport exhaust comes on in that Sport Plus mode. And it sounds a little bit more like a 6-cylinder. It definitely sounds less like a Subaru whenever you are in that sport mode. Wow, and it really comes alive. It feels really good now in that Sport Plus mode. So anyway, for the Cayman GTS here now, the new 718 version runs a 2.5-liter flat 4 engine, and it does 365 horsepower. That's 15 more than you get in the normal Cayman S, and then you get 317 pound-feet of torque, and that's because of the PDK. Now, if you go for a manual GTS, it's 309, but 317 here with the PDK. And anyway, so we're at the dampers in sport mode. We're going around a corner here, see how the handling is. And it feels very flat. I mean, this vehicle is going to handle very well because we're talking about a vehicle that weighs less than 3,100 pounds. I think it's 3,098 pounds to be exact, according to Porsche's site. And so that means that, you know, it's very light. And again, compared to, again, I'm going to keep comparing it to the Supra because that's the newest, hottest thing that has just come out. I just reviewed one of those recently. And this is, you know, going to be a lot lighter than that by about, you know, 300 pounds or so. So that's what you really feel, is that this is just a little more effortless in corners with the Supra, and even stuff like the M2 and other vehicles like that, even the M4 especially. You're fighting the weight a lot more with those vehicles. Now, it's not a hardship, but this just is a lot more pure with its handling. Sport Plus mode, it really just wants to always be leaving me in the higher RPMs, which is great. But we'll try out the normal sport mode here, kind of make it relax a little bit. But actually, while we're here, why don't we try out the manual mode and see how that does? Yeah, its PDK is fantastic. It is so quick. And even whenever you're off throttle, it is still very responsive. And very light throttle, it's still, I mean, it drops immediately. It's really, really good here. And then all you gotta do is a couple pulls of these paddles that feel great, and then you're right in the fun again. But another tight corner here. Yeah, it feels fantastic. Oh yeah, this would be great to take around a track because it's just one of those vehicles that really feels like it can eat up the corners. I mean, we have the 20-inch wheels, which are unique here to the GTS as well, and they're running Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires too, which is great. You know, brand new, awesome tire from Michelin. It's 235 wide in the front and then 265 in the rears. Yeah, it's a strong engine. There is a tiny bit of a turbo lag sensation where it's not lag free, and I'm watching the boost build, and it's coming on little by little, and of course when you're in the higher RPMs it's going to come on a little quicker, but you can feel it building versus, again, some of the other competition where you have like twin scroll turbos and those which really kind of come on a little bit earlier, and it's just a tuning thing as well. I think this is kind of tuned to be, torquey, but still, give you some of that top end power, and that's why, they still wanted this thing to be able to rev out to, over 7,000 RPMs, and so in order to spread out that boost, you kind of have to take a little bit to spool up, but it feels fantastic though. Really, really great. It just doesn't feel quite as torquey as like the Supra, but the Supra's got like 365 pound-feet of torque versus this, having the 317. So you have less torque. You also have less weight to push around, so it's probably a wash. But to me, this just feels a slight bit less torquey than that does. But we'll go ahead and put it back into the automatic mode here and just cruise. But even now in, the sport mode here, it's a slight bit firmer, but it is still totally daily drivable. I think you can totally live with it, even in driving in sport mode. So it's not like you have to, kill all the fun in order to have this be a friendly daily driver. You can have it in the sport modes, and you still have a great time. And it really is amazing how it does firm it up quite well. And yeah, I'm just really enjoying this thing. And I just wish that I could drive faster and faster, because you can tell this vehicle has such high limits, even though it is only the Cayman. It's the baby Porsche, but this thing is, a sports car through and through, of course. The Caymans have been fantastic. I drove the first gen Cayman S several years ago, loved that. I've driven, the Cayman GT4 of the, previous like half generation here before the turbo 4-cylinders came in for the regular Caymans, and that was fantastic. Yeah, that has taller gearing with the manual on that though. We did that sweet 6-cylinder that sounds amazing. And so you know, it's always, the Cayman's been always transitioning, and it's always, there's different flavors, and so it all depends what you want. I think this is going to feel way punchier down low than stuff like, you know, the GT4, for example, with its tall gears. But you know, this I think is fun to rev out, but it's not going to give you quite as much of the build-up and the engagement that you get with the GT4, of course. Another thing that's great about the Cayman GTS with the sport exhaust is you get those crackles and pops. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's a very, very great sound. We'll do a manual thing, try and get it up. It's really nice sounding. It's not overkill. It's not like an F-Type or something where it's like gunfire behind you, but it sounds really good. It's funny though, if you just pull a paddle, you have to be in manual mode for it to hold that paddle, because otherwise PDK will be like, all right, based on throttle input, we're going to do whatever we think is best. So you always want to make sure you stay in that manual mode if you're going to want to use these paddles. Another nice thing you get with the GTS package is stiffer anti-roll bars, so that helps make it even flatter than a regular Cayman S, which I'm sure is not floaty by any means, but you know, this improves it just a little bit more, which is great. Other things to note here about the Cayman GTS is, you know, everything is very driver oriented, exactly how you would really want it to be set up. So you have really sharp throttle response, even despite the fact that this is, you know, turbo. It's just, there's a tiny bit of a tip in, and then it is very, very responsive. Feels great. Steering has a nice weight to it, especially here in the sport mode as well. Feels really good. Brakes also have a good, as someone pulls out in front of us, has a nice feel to it. They have very confidence-inspiring brakes here in the GTS. So we have 4-piston Brembo brakes up front there, and then in the back they're also 4-piston. So for sustained track driving, this would be very, very good. I will say though, this exhaust can get a little boomy, so it's nice that you can turn it off if you don't feel like having loud exhaust on all the time, because it is really fun whenever you're in the mood for it, but I could see how this could get a little old if you're daily driving this every day, you know, to not have that boominess and stuff, but it sounds great at the low speeds. There's those crackles, sounds great. The more and more that I drive this car too, the more that this sound is growing on me. Maybe part of it's because I'm a Subaru fan, and so I like the sound of Boxer 4s, but it sounds really good to me. Another thing that's really impressing me about the Cayman here is that it is so solid feeling. Like, there's no rattles, there's no squeaks. Everything feels really well put together and really tight and high quality, which is awesome because, again, that's not guaranteed in a lot of other vehicles, even from German manufacturers. So a lot of them like to squeak and rattle even whenever they're relatively new. And so the fact that this is still, I mean, obviously this one isn't old or anything, but it's great that this is still, you know, really just feels like it's a high quality product. But another cool thing here that we have with the GTS Cayman is you have an overboost function called Sport Response. And so you hit that little button and it gives you an overboost that's temporary. I think it's about 20 seconds or so. And so I'm just going to you know, go from a lower speed here and hit that and see what it does. Yeah, and then it really rips and feels even a little bit more punchy, but everything immediately, like, you know, it downshifts and just wants to go, go, go. And it has a little timer too, you know, giving a countdown. This is how much longer you have before it cuts off, and that's really a cool feature, and no one else does that, and I love it. And then look at that. After the 20 seconds is over, it's like, all right, now we're going to upshift again. So it's really great. Like Sophion says, whenever he uses it the most is when he's passing someone on the highway or something. You want all the power. You want to make a quick pass. You hit that, and boom, you're in the crazy aggressive mode for 20 seconds. You get what you need done, and then that's it. That's brilliant. I wish every car had that. That would be amazing. And out on the highway here now, we're just in the normal mode, and it's really quiet and serene. The exhaust, you know, quiets down. We're just kind of cruising here in 7th gear, and it's all very relaxed and feels great. And so that's the great thing about the Cayman here is, again, it's daily drivability. That's what I keep going back to is, you know, you just have so much storage space. You have, you know, it's just going to be a great grand tour as well as being an excellent sports car. It's amazing how much fun it is to drive the Cayman. I mean, even just going around on and off ramps is a pleasure. The last thing I want to mention though here is the PDK in normal mode whenever you're at low speeds isn't quite as responsive as I would like. It feels kind of laggy, like it always is hesitating to downshift it. It really wants to hypermount, really wants to stay in those higher gears, and that means that, you know, you're like, come on, sometimes waiting for it. Now, if you do an aggressive throttle input, then you can get, you know, up and going, but it really wants to just hold off as long as possible to give you that downshift, again, whenever you're in that normal mode. But yeah, overall, the Cayman here is fantastic. It always has been, and you know, with the 718 Cayman GTS, it is still fantastic fun. Now, personally, I would rather go for the 6-cylinder and just go for a used Cayman GTS and save yourself a good bit of money, because, you know, these are pricey at $94,000. I would probably still go for the manual as well and save myself another $3,400 bucks. You know, the turbo and the PDK are great still, and it's going to be awesome for most people. But you know, for purists and those who just like shifting their own gears, I still think the manual is going to be fun, and it's great that they still offer it, so it's great to support it while it still is available. And the last thing, you know, mentioning that price, I mentioned earlier, $94,000, which, yes, is high, and very high even for this segment. But Porsches, you know, they've always commanded a little bit of a premium, and maybe some of that is the badge, but I think a lot of it is just, like I said, it feels very solid in here, and it's also expensive to have a lightweight vehicle, and so that's why this is, you know, 300 pounds lighter than like the Supra and others. Those can't use lightweight materials because they're trying to be more affordable. This, you know, it's charging you extra, but, you know, you have the mid-engine layout, which is a little more exotic, and you have lighter materials, and that costs money, and so I think that's part of what you're paying for, and that's why, you know, you look at the specs and then you look at the price and you're like, ouch, that's expensive. And it is still, there's no way around that, but I think that's kind of how I justify the higher price tag of the Porsche over the Cayman, and I can kind of understand and appreciate why, you know, you have to pay more to have the lightweight and the mid-engine setup and all that type of stuff. And so whenever you consider those types of things, you know, I think that the Cayman's price is justified, and I think for those who have the means to be able to pay that premium, they are going to really appreciate it, and I think it is, you know, going to be worthwhile if you can afford it. And so anyway, huge thanks to Sophion again of Redline Reviews for allowing me to review his baby here, this beautiful, beautiful Cayman. And so if you want to hear more about what it's like to own one of these and the ownership experience and, you know, his thoughts on it, definitely go check out his review, and he'll do, he always does updates, you know, every so often as well on how the vehicles are holding up. And so definitely go check out his channel. I'll include a link in the description below, and, you know, definitely give him a subscribe and, you know, follow along if you're interested in how the Cayman GTS here holds up over time. But anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on the GTS in the comments below, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.